and she had already had her mouth over my head, she would have killed me.
She was looking for a death bite.
They go through bone like you and I go through a candy bar.
It's everyone's worst nightmare, being eaten alive by a wild animal. In this episode, 3 horrific stories of people who've been attacked by predators of the African savannah. What's it like to become human prey? Conservationist Gary Kamasha was lucky to escape alive when he was savagely attacked by a lion on a game reserve.
And I thought that this was it. You know, I thought this would be the end.
The African savannah, home to one of the most feared predators on Earth, the lion. Thousands of people have met their end in the jaws of these killer cats. This pride lives in a game reserve in South Africa's Mpumalanga province. And when food is short or they feel threatened, these big cats can turn man-eater. With lions around, no one can afford to be off guard. Danger is part of the job for 23-year-old conservationist Gary Kamasha. He manages the reserve's lions, and today he has a problem. A lioness is wounded, and she's pregnant.
This female, because she was injured and finding it difficult to keep up with the pride to feed and to compete for food around the carcasses and things like that, she was getting very hungry.
If Gary tries to treat the lioness, the pride could tear him apart. His plan? To isolate her in an enclosure by luring her in with bait. But the dominant males get to the meat first. Some are her own offspring.
Here we go. Home-style breakfast.
Wow.
Days later, Gary is still waiting. He relaxes with friends and makes a dangerous mistake.
24. Yeah.
I took off my sidearm and put it to the one side to just be more comfortable and not thinking of anything that can happen at that point.
But today will be different. The pride is staying outside the enclosure, and the hungry lioness grabs the opportunity to feed.
She's in the enclosure.
Gary is delighted she's finally taken the bait.
Right, I'll be back in a couple of minutes. I just want to close the gate.
Now he can treat her injury.
5 minutes. Come, let's go.
I basically thought, okay, this is what we've been hoping for. Let's quickly go and close the gates and make sure that she's constrained inside.
But in the rush, he's forgotten the one thing that could protect him in an attack. A 150 feet from the enclosure gates, they see the pride, the lioness, isn't with them.
There she is, behind that bush.
Oh.
Gary is relieved his plan is finally working. But something is wrong.
She's not alone.
One of the pride's aggressive young males is inside the enclosure and will attack if threatened.
This male was always been a bit edgy and agitated, barking at you and coughing, the typical attack bark if you get too close to him.
Getting the young lion out is dangerous, but without treatment, the lioness could die of gangrene. Gary's plan, forcing the young male out by using the truck.
So we went into the gate and I tried to get the vehicle between the male and this female and then push him out so that he could be running out. And once he would be outside, we could close the gates.
But the young lion isn't easily intimidated. He's not leaving.
I think what happened at that point, he was looking at the movement of the vehicle. So the vehicle and the people inside was posing a threat to him as well as myself. And instead of him running for the gate, he was just seeing himself being crowded by this whole scenario. I was worried that he might start getting agitated, running up and down, psyching up the female as well, the rest of the pride.
Forcing him out with the truck hasn't worked. All Gary can do now is try to flush the lion out himself.
Just gonna have to go in there and chase him out.
I thought I'd go on foot, use the vehicle as protection so the female couldn't really see what was going on, and then chase him out on foot.
It's a risky move, especially as Gary still hasn't realized he's forgotten his gun.
But trying to flush a young adolescent male on foot is a big mistake. Young males tend to be the biggest troublemakers. You know, lions are not used to being in close proximity to human beings that are not inside of a vehicle.
The lion is starting to feel threatened. It could attack at any moment.
I was just assuming that this male would just run out, and I wasn't even thinking of him feeling a bit of discomfort. I was entering his comfort zone and his personal space.
And he was essentially cornered because he was in a fenced-in area, so that's the time when an animal will react out of fear.
Instead of diverting his direction towards the gap between myself and the vehicle, he was actually zooming in on me.
Give me here. Here.
I realized he was coming for me now. I did think of that point my sidearm. This was the most stupid thing that I could have done. I don't know why I took it off.
Gary tries frantically to get out of the lion's way, but it's too late.
He was planning to go for my upper body. I moved back, he misjudged himself. I think that actually, to a certain extent, saved my life.
The lion has missed Gary's head, but it locks its vice-like jaws around his leg. His friends, also unarmed, can only watch in horror. Gary has now become human prey. A lion has savagely attacked conservationist Gary Kamash. Unarmed, he must now fight for his life with his bare hands.
And I had my hands trying to push his head down and away from me and keep him down. It was like an iron vice, a big vice just clamping around my leg.
A lion's jaws can bite with nearly 900 pounds of pressure, enough to snap the spine of its prey with ease.
The lion certainly was trying to control him and immobilize him and get him to a point where he could access a more vital area.
Outside the enclosure, the pride can smell blood.
The pride were trying to figure out what's busy happening, where did those sounds come from.
The pride is becoming restless. If they join in the attack, Gary is finished. Frantic, he tries to pry open the lion's jaws.
I tried to put my thumbs into his mouth between his premolars. I couldn't get in him, they were already too close to each other. I just realized there's no way I'll be able to get my leg out of this.
Gary's friend Johan tries to find anything he can to use as a weapon. But he comes up empty. The pride is getting agitated. They can sense a kill.
Some lions are dedicated man-eaters, using humans as a regular part of their diet.
The hunting instinct kicks in. The attack is on.
The rest of the pride was already coming in, and I shouted to my friend, keep the rest of the pride away, keep the rest of the pride away. And knowing that if they would come in, it would have been the end.
Keep the freaking pride away!
I thought that this was it, you know. With the rest of the pride coming in to assist, I thought this would be the end. I wouldn't be able to fend off the rest of the group, so I was shouting at him, and he jumped out of the vehicle and started throwing pieces of branches and rocks.
Incredibly, Johan manages to hold the pride back.
I'm coming!
But Gary's leg is still locked in the lion's mouth. He needs to do something fast. Desperate, Gary attacks the lion's only weak spot, its eyes.
I could just feel when I pressed my thumb into his eye that he was blinking and trying to get out. That was hurting him.
The nose and the eyes are very vulnerable. That's the part of them that they have to, at all costs, protect.
But the lion won't let go. It fights back with razor-sharp claws.
Or not only will they shred your flesh like a hot knife through butter, but the infections caused by those claws are also very septic and can lead to rapid infection and death.
A lion's claws carry deadly bacteria that can cause tumors, inflammation of the heart, and kidney failure.
I still remember the sound of ripping flesh. And I could see the skin stretching, and then could feel the skin ripping.
Time is running out. Johan has nothing else to throw at the lions. If the pride attacks, Gary is unlikely to escape alive. South African conservationist Gary Kamasha is being ripped apart by a lion. The rest of the pride are about to join the attack.
Shoot! Hey! I can't keep them back any longer!
Fearing for his life, Johan has gotten back in the vehicle.
The worst moment for me, Johan shouting, I can't fend him anymore, and his door closing, hearing his door banging, closing up. I realized how close I was to death.
Gary struggles desperately to free himself. He punches the lion in the eye, but it won't let go.
And I was just going down on his eye with my fist as hard as I could and putting my thumb into his eyes and pressing down.
For a moment, the lion loosens its grip. Gary sees his chance and takes it.
I think what he wanted to do was to reposition himself and take me down. When he started opening his mouth, I ripped my leg out of his mouth.
Gary, come! Come! Come on, get in! Come!
The rest of the pride was very psyched up. 4, 5, 10 seconds longer than I would have been taken and ripped apart.
Adrenaline is coursing through Gary's body, numbing his pain.
We need to have it checked out by a professional, okay?
Only when he's safely away does he realize the severity of his wounds.
Okay? Okay. Just
When I looked down, I saw the piece of flesh hanging out the back of my leg. He ripped some of my tendons out of my arm as well, and I didn't even pick up that I couldn't use my left hand properly.
let's pull over. I'll drive, okay?
Okay.
Just pull over.
Okay.
Pull over.
It takes half an hour to get to the nearest hospital.
On the road down to the doctor, I remember I started feeling very awkward. I started getting a bit nauseous and not feeling well. I was bleeding extensively.
Gary gets more than 50 stitches in his leg and arm. He's lucky to be alive.
There was a number of things that saved my life that day, and the one thing that was definitely the fact that he was inexperienced and a young lion, and the fact that I saw him coming for me and jumped backwards.
Just a few weeks later, Gary returns to work on the game reserve. In the meantime, the lioness's wounds has healed naturally, and she's given birth to a healthy litter. Gary's close brush with death has made him realize that on the savannah, you can never drop your guard.
I think what it did cause me is to be way more cautious than I was at that point, because I can remember I was getting more and more complacent with these animals.
Ever since Homo sapiens first walked the African savannah, we have lived in fear of the mighty lion. These superb predators have ruled their territory for over 1 million years. Unarmed, humans stand little chance. Even today, more than 100 people every year are killed by lions.
Humans have always been on the menu of lions throughout history, you know, throughout our coevolution with them.
But lions are not the only man-eaters here. The hyena is just as deadly. It can eat every part of its victim, even the bones. Hyenas are despised because they dig up graves and eat human remains. And feared because they kill the living. In the 1950s, hyenas terrorized a village in Malawi. They killed and devoured 27 people, many of them children. The stealthy man-eaters crept up on villagers as they slept outdoors during hot weather. They grabbed their victims by the head and dragged them off into the bushes to feed. There was little left for devastated families to bury. Hyenas are fearless predators. In 1972, a Malawi schoolteacher, Yerandas Luggage, was cycling to work when he was taken down by hyenas. He knew there'd be nothing left of him if they dragged him away. He fought as hard as he could, screaming for help. By the time villagers rescued him, he was barely alive. People forget how deadly hyenas can be. Danny Tail Blanche wasn't scared of them until one tried to eat him alive.
And I thought, I'm gonna die now.
Spring 1998. Aircraft pilot Danny Tail Blanche is enjoying a week's vacation with friends on the Zambezi River. Every year, the group heads off into the wilderness for a taste of adventure.
All the time there's exciting moments because there's a lot of hippo. There's crocodiles, lions, and of course, hyenas.
After an action-packed day on the water, the friends pull up for the evening. A ground crew has set up camp and cooked a hearty meal.
We thought we had a very successful trip, so we were a very happy bunch of people.
It's been great, 6 days. Yeah, especially when you and
It's the last day of the holiday. Time to celebrate.
Some of my friends were wine farmers. And of course, we brought a lot of good wine with us.
It's close, eh? That's close.
We heard lions every night. We knew there was quite a lot of lions, but nobody had a gun.
Are you sure you're still going to sleep out here tonight? Yeah, man.
Predators are nearby, but Danny won't sleep in a tent. A big mistake.
There's a recipe for hyena attacks, and the recipe would be sleeping with your door open, sleeping in your sleeping bag on the ground outside of a tent.
Oh, I think I'm going to call it a night. Good night, gentlemen. Yeah, sleep well. All right. Yeah, you too. Good night to you.
Every night I slept outside, yes. But with some protection, I had chairs around my mattress, and of course I had a mosquito net that was hanging from a tree.
But a flimsy mosquito net won't stop a hungry man-eater.
These are animals that can dent a pipe, a 1-inch pipe. They can crush it without hurting their teeth.
At night, the hyena has a huge advantage. It can see in the dark.
Hyenas, like all nocturnal hunters, have incredible ability to see and smell at night. Night vision is excellent. They're looking for garbage. They're looking for the things that were thrown out after dinner. And they come onto something like a person laying there sleeping. That's a carcass to a hyena. you're a large meal for them, they're not going to check your pulse before they go ahead and grab you.
I thought somebody, they hit me with a plank over my head.
When Danny realizes it's a hyena attack, his blood runs cold. If it drags him into the bushes, it could tear him apart in seconds. Danny Terreblanche is on a kayaking holiday on the Zambezi River when he is attacked by a hyena.
I've got no weapon, and I think my way of protecting myself is to pull a thick blanket over my head. It doesn't bite my head off.
A hyena's bite can exert a force of up to 1,000 pounds. They have particularly large teeth, premolars to crush bones, and carnassials at the back of the mouth, which slice up meat like scissors.
They have the strongest bite of any predator on Earth. Stronger than a lion, stronger than a bear. They go through bone like you and I go through a candy bar.
I tried to lie on my stomach in a crawl position, but it was just instinct. Then it grabbed me by the neck and it dragged me.
A few feet further into the bushes, and he could be ripped to pieces by the hungry hyena.
He will proceed to drag you off and start eating you. That's what would happen.
The hyena strategy is to kill you and then dismember you and then run away with whatever bits they could.
Without the support of the rest of the pack, the hyena cannot fight for its meal. So it retreats.
I felt the pain in my head, and when I felt it with my hand, I knew there was something terribly wrong. I felt a hole in my head. My biggest fear was that I lost my ear and I'm going to lose my hearing. And of course, the first thing that goes through one's mind is that I'm going to lose my flying career.
Luckily, Danny's ear is still in one piece.
Hold on, we just need to clean the ear.
My ear was still in the mosquito net, hanging by a little piece of skin from my head.
Just rinse it off.
I think they probably will wash it with some good old Cape dry red wine.
Desperate to save his ear, his friends bind it back onto the gaping wound. The nearest hospital is in Kariba, 80 miles across rough terrain. They need to hurry. Danny is at grave risk of a deadly infection. Hyenas eat rotting carcasses, and their mouths are crawling with dangerous bacteria.
You can imagine the bumps in the road. I don't know how many times I've passed out.
Adrenaline from the attack is wearing off. Danny's in shock.
I prayed a lot, and I asked God to help me, and that was, I think, that maybe pulled me through.
All right, now we're going to go in now. Come on, the place is going to be good.
It takes them nearly 9 hours to reach Kariba. The town only has a small basic hospital. The doctor does what she can to save Danny's ear.
She had to stitch it back onto my head, but there was no anesthetics. My friends had to held me on the table while she did the job. That was very, very painful.
Danny's then flown back to South Africa, where a plastic surgeon performs 3 painful operations. His ear is finally restored, and he can resume his flying career. As Danny discovered, on the savannah, Homo sapiens can become just another link in the food chain. Humans aren't the usual prey for hyenas and lions, but when food is scarce, these animals will attack almost anything. In 1898, when an epidemic meant other prey was in short supply, 2 hungry lions launched one of the worst series of attacks ever recorded. The man-eating pair are thought to have killed more than 100 railway workers in Kenya. The lions may have begun by scavenging graves. Then, with a taste for human flesh, they began a bloody rampage that lasted 9 months. Work came to a standstill. Night curfews were imposed. Workers hoped high fences and fires would keep them safe. But the lions still got in. They pulled their prey from their beds and dragged them off into the bushes to be devoured. Chief Engineer Lieutenant Colonel John Henry Patterson knew he had to kill the lions if the railway was to be built. He tried for months to catch the savage predators. Then, finally, on the night of December 9th, 1898, he managed to shoot the first lion. 20 days later, he killed the second. Patterson became an instant hero. Male lions are extremely dangerous, but the lioness is just as deadly. She is a true hunter of the pride, a ruthless, efficient killer. When Bruce Meekall had to hunt a rogue lioness, he soon found out why these predators have such a terrifying reputation.
She had bitten down from the top of my head, and I was fighting for my life.
Limpopo, South Africa. This lioness is a loner. She's old and hungry. Local villagers are terrified she might start preying on their cattle, or on them.
But lions are usually persecuted by people because they pose a threat. Usually that threat is to their livestock, to their goats or their cattle.
Professional hunters are called in to put her down. Leading the team is conservationist Bruce Meekall. He's sad to have to kill such a magnificent animal. Doing the job humanely is his top priority.
It's your responsibility to make sure that things are done properly and as ethically as possible.
You got the road?
Yep. You know, make sure that the animal goes down, you know, in a clean sweep. We had been notified by one of the trackers where the lioness was, so we headed up in our vehicle to that area. There's quite a few things to take into consideration when hunting a lion. Wind direction, the vegetation around you, and obviously the fact that you've got to have a clear visual around you. You don't want to be in really dense bush where you can end up in a bad situation.
Bruce and his crew begin tracking the rogue lioness.
So we started walking, looking for signs to see where she was. Tracks, old kills, things like that.
But the lioness has probably already picked up the hunter's scent and keeps out of sight.
Lions are very good hunters. They're very good at camouflaging themselves.
For 2 days, they search for the big cat, but she remains invisible. The longer it takes to find her, the greater the danger to local villagers.
If lions can get away with it, if they have opportunities, they consider humans part of the diet, especially in more harsh environments where prey density of their preferred prey is lower.
Finally, they work out which way the animal is heading. If they're quick, they just might catch her.
Later that morning, we had actually bumped into her purely through tracking. That enabled us, obviously, to get set up to take the shot.
Bruce wants to take the lioness out with a single bullet. If he only wounds her, she's likely to attack. Bruce Meekall has been tracking a rogue lioness for 2 days. He now needs to put her down with a single bullet.
The shot was a good shot. But she got up and ran off. Went into thick bush.
Something has gone very wrong. The bullet hit the lioness, but hasn't killed her.
So the bullet hadn't done what it was supposed to do. The bullet opens up and has a hard impact in order to make an instant kill. In this situation, it basically just went straight through.
If you didn't kill them the first time, and you just wounded them and it wasn't in a vital area and they survived, you would never get a chance again to catch up with them. And if you did, it would be after they killed another dozen or more people.
This is hard for Bruce. What should have been a swift, humane kill has resulted in an angry, injured animal.
The animal's adrenaline is up, and by walking in there immediately, you basically putting yourself into a situation where she's going to come out and attack you.
Just have to be very careful.
They decide to give the lioness a chance to calm down.
We head back as a safety precaution and got in our vehicles.
Boys, let's go.
An hour later, Bruce sets off again. He knows that he and his team are now vulnerable. The lioness is on the defensive and could strike at any moment.
When a lion is badly injured, they'll retreat 2 or 3 times at the most before they'll turn and they'll attack, whether you have 100 people with you or whether it's 1 or 2 people.
The lioness has the hunters in her sights. She waits patiently for them to come closer. Her pursuers are now her prey.
The lions will cover a distance of 100 meters in about 6 seconds. So there's not much chance to get into any position. So you basically turn, point, and take your shot. By the time I reloaded to take the second shot, she had jumped onto me.
The attack is savage. The lioness goes straight for Bruce's head.
The main thing that they go for is the most vital spot and the most vulnerable spot, and that's the neck and the head.
As we came down towards the ground, she had already had her mouth over my head and bit me on the back of my head. With the impact of us hitting the ground, my head bounced out of her mouth. To see teeth and saliva and hair, and I mean, the sound that they make is incredibly loud.
The others can't fire. They could hit Bruce.
They fling you around like a rag doll. With their strength and power, every time they hit you, your whole body is being thrown about.
She would have been feeling for his vertebrae so she could puncture and sever the spinal cord.
The wounded cat is in a frenzy.
You don't know what's happening. You're just trying to get a grip of the whole situation around you and what to do in order to survive.
The lioness is much stronger than Bruce. The moment he weakens, she will kill him. Bruce Meekall has been savagely attacked by a wounded lioness. His team can't shoot her because they might kill him. He's become human prey.
Once they go into attack mode, they don't turn back. And then they're gonna press that attack until either you're dead or they're dead.
All you're thinking about is trying to survive. Trying to get yourself into a position of maybe having an inch of control.
He must try to keep the lioness from moving long enough for his team to shoot her without hitting him. Bruce is an experienced hunter. He knows the lioness will try to gut him with her back claws.
My natural instinct was to pick my legs up so she didn't disembowel me. And when she came for my face, that's when I stuck my arm in her mouth.
Bruce has disabled 2 of her deadly weapons, her teeth and back claws. He hugs the lioness tight to immobilize her. The ordeal is finally over. But even though she nearly killed him, Bruce can't help regretting that this superb creature had to be put down.
In the instance when she had died, there is being so close, there is definitely a feeling that goes through you of what's happened to you and what's happened to her.
Shock sets in quickly. Bruce needs urgent medical attention. He has torn veins and over 40 lacerations. His injuries are life-threatening. A lion's saliva carries bacteria, which can cause terrible infection and internal bleeding.
I spent 5.5 hours in surgery. I came out of hospital after 1.5 to 2 weeks. You know, then it's a long recovery, I think, from there, mentally and physically. Within a couple of months, I'd healed up. I was able to use, you know, my arm again and a bit of therapy that, you know, that helped. On the mental side, I think you've got to accept what's happened to you and move forward.
You know, there's very few first-hand accounts like that, because lions usually, when they attack like that, they usually kill their victim.
Bruce is lucky to survive. Despite his close brush with death, he goes back to work as a conservation manager in the Savannah. But he's given up hunting for good.
It's hard to go back to doing what you were doing after an incident like that. There's definitely a sense of respect and a sense of fear.
Lions and hyenas can kill a person in seconds, but attacks are rare. Normally, these predators will avoid us. It's only when food is scarce or they feel threatened that they strike. And when they do, the results are devastating.
I realized how close I was to death that day. I think it gave me a lot of more respect for life. It made me realizing that every moment, any moment could be your last moment.
Surprisingly, many survivors don't blame the animals.
I've got more respect for hyenas because it's an opportunistic killer. I have more respect for hyena, and I won't take a chance or give them a chance.
I can feel the warm blood running down the side of my face.
I have never felt that kind of pain before in my life.
There's pressure crushing my lower back.
It's everyone's worst nightmare, being eaten alive by a wild animal. In this episode, 3 remarkable stories from the water's edge. What's it like when you become human prey? Monreal was nearly killed when an angry gator savagely attacked him in the water hazard on a Florida golf course.
I was slammed from the back. My shoulder wasn't attached anymore.
The Tampa Palms Golf and Country Club, Florida. The kind of place people come to kick back and enjoy the high life. But its ponds and lakes are also home to creatures that have barely changed since the dinosaurs.
Alligators are very common in Florida, and almost any freshwater system can have alligators in it. And that's one of the things that people need to be aware of, is that just because they haven't seen an alligator in an area doesn't mean there isn't one right now.
The lake by hole 13 is the territory of this 7-foot alligator. He's always hungry, and he's not too picky.
As long as they can catch it and eat it, almost anything is potential prey. And they'll take things as big as deer occasionally.
Golfers on this course are always in striking distance of gators, but no one has been attacked yet. 62-year-old Ike Monreal owns a golf ball retrieval service, diving for lost balls in the lakes here. He normally pairs up with one of his sons, but today, he's working solo.
Well, I get as many as 12,000 balls in a single day. And at this time and point, I was being paid 8 cents per ball.
Ike's been doing this job for the last 15 years and knows how dangerous it can be.
I've been nudged not knowing the alligator was in the water. That happens. They'll stay down for 15, 20 minutes. So I've been bumped, nudged, nipped, tail whipped. Almost all of us divers working in the southeastern United States, we have close calls like that.
The gator is getting hungrier by the minute. The hot weather triggers its need to kill and feed.
Alligator activity is related to temperature. When temperatures get to their highest, alligators are trying to feed on a very regular basis.
That's a big concern for Ike.
When I approach a lake, I'll look and make sure I'm the only participant in the water.
He sees a familiar sight.
Saw the usual 7.5 foot gator that's there all the time.
Ike keeps a close eye on the reptile.
Females occasionally do attack humans, but it's not as common as males. Males get a lot bigger than females.
The coast seems clear, but Ike is yet to notice that another gator is also in the pond. And this one is a gigantic 400-pound male.
Generally speaking, the larger the alligator, the greater potential problem with an attack on a human.
Ike gets on with his job. The limited visibility means he can't see the 10-foot gator coming straight at him. A gator determined to protect his new territory.
I was just about ready to come out of the water. I had enough air left. Life was good. I was just working away at it.
And that's when the gator moves in.
All of a sudden something clicked at the alligator and it says, I'm going to go ahead and give this a try.
Searing pain shoots through Ike.
The horrific force, the slamming effect, the excruciating pain, and I knew it was going to be life or death.
Like a sledgehammer, the gator's jaws slam down on his shoulder with 2,000 pounds of pressure.
Teeth are very sharp and they can lacerate and tear, but they don't actually sever like a shark's teeth will do. So an alligator's teeth are mainly meant for holding on.
The pain, in all honesty, on a scale of 1 to 10 was an 11. I have never felt that kind of pain before in my life.
If the prey item's too big to swallow whole, they'll try and spin off pieces.
Ike sees his left shoulder disappear into the gator's jaws. One quick spin, and his arm could be ripped right off.
I couldn't bring my arm back to me, so I thought I had already lost my arm.
Ike stares right into the eye of a monster.
That big, lifeless, dead eye, that look, that eye was right here. I tried getting up and going for the bank.
Incredibly, he crawls towards shore with the alligator still latched onto his shoulder. Seeing two golfers nearby, he desperately tries to get their attention. They can barely believe what they're seeing. Ike is fighting for his life.
I said to myself, you have got to keep your head together here.
Hey! Over here!
Ike can't last much longer, and he knows it. As well as being ripped apart, he could easily drown. Retrieving golf balls in a pond at a country club in Tampa, Florida, Ike Monreal has been attacked by a vicious 400-pound gator. His screams attract terrified golfers desperate to help save him. The shore is only a few more feet away. Rescue is within grasp. And then Ike's gone.
He had such size and girth, he just dragged me right back down again.
An alligator will try and get the victim off balance, trying to drag them out to deeper water. And once it's drowned, then they will dine on it at their leisure.
Ike struggles. He needs to make sure that he keeps his oxygen supply. Without it, he will die in minutes.
I said to myself, you pass out, the regulator falls out of your mouth, and you're gonna die here. That's when I prayed to God.
For Ike, it's now or never. He needs to do something, and fast.
I worked my hand around his snout. I was able to turn into him. My shoulder is as far back into his jaw as it can go.
Ike jams his thumb in the reptile's eye.
The most vulnerable part of an alligator is probably its eyes. Everything else is pretty well protected.
But the move barely phases the gator.
An alligator might expect to have slight pressure to its eye if it grabs a large prey item.
Ike could be seconds from dying. He reaches back with everything he's got.
That's when I stuck my thumb as far back into his eye and as down as far as I could.
The move stuns the gator.
But then when he went further in, this was something that was totally unexpected by the alligator.
He just went ballistic. The bite got worse, and that's when he tried to roll me.
They will grab a hold of an appendage and then spin in the water to try and get that appendage torn off.
He's in so much pain, Ike can't keep his thumb in the gator's eye socket.
I was thinking that it was, you know, the demise. The end was there. I saw my wife and my 3 teenage sons looking down at me. And I said, that's not going to work. I said, I am not going to die out here. I am not going to give up. Whatever it takes, I'm coming out of the water.
Luckily, the fight takes them into the shallows. At last, Ike can get a foothold. Now he can stop the gator from rolling him.
I was not going to let him kill me. I was not going to let him drown me.
And then Ike goes in for another attack.
I certainly wasn't going to let him sit there and twist off whatever he had in his mouth. I took my thumb again, took a deep breath, and slammed it in his eye socket. And I swear I got halfway to his brain.
Alligators can feel and react to pain. They don't like that.
Against all odds, the giant's jaws finally snap open. Ike seizes the opportunity and desperately tries to get out of the water.
They learned very fast and probably realized this was not the type of thing that it wanted to pursue.
Ike scrambles onto the bank before the gator changes his mind and comes back.
I looked up at the gentleman that was standing on the green. I said, just make sure he doesn't come out of the water after me. I said, I don't think I can handle another bite.
The alligator swims away.
He went out into the deeper part of the swamp. And at that point, I knew I was safe.
You all right? Are you okay?
He dislocated my shoulder. My shoulder wasn't attached anymore. There were teeth holes 1 inch across, 1.5 inches deep over the shoulder.
Careful, careful. Paramedics on their way.
It's bad, but things could have been far worse. Ike's 17-year-old son had originally been scheduled to work that day.
He wouldn't have had the size or the experience. The horrific fact of all of this is I would have lost my son.
Ike may never fully regain the use of his arm. He and his sons have not returned to the water since the attack.
My sons do not dive anymore. My business is Ike and Sons. My boys I'll not let go in the water anymore. So do I want to get even? You betcha.
4 hours after the attack, a state-licensed trapper captures an 8-foot alligator from the lake, 50 feet from the scene of the crime.
If we didn't do that, there is no doubt there would be a lot more attacks because alligators become habituated, and if they have a successful attack, they'll come back for another one.
Ike doesn't believe the trapper got the one that wanted him as prey.
I think she trapped the smaller, the 7.5, 8-footer that was there. And I do not think to this day that it was that smaller gator.
In that case, the gator that nearly killed him is still out there. Alligators can prove lethal in the southern U.S., but in Africa and Australia, the biggest threat to humans is their deadlier cousin. Crocodiles kill as many as 200 people every year. The largest and most aggressive is a saltwater crocodile, a powerful reptile that can outlive humans and grow to more than 20 feet in length. Despite the name, their natural habitat is actually freshwater rivers and swamps. What makes them so deadly is their uncanny camouflage. In September 1872, Australian Constable William Davis decided to break police regulations and take a refreshing swim in Darwin Harbor. Davis spotted a log floating some distance out and swam over to it. Suddenly, the log started swimming towards him, very quickly. Davis soon realized it was a saltwater crocodile that had left a river and headed into the harbor. But it was too late. As Davis started to swim away, the croc zeroed in, its jaws crashing down on his head. Constable William Davis became the first police fatality in Australia's Northern Territory. More than 100 years later, amateur diver Jeff Tanswell was also savaged by a saltwater croc. It turned a snorkeling trip into a bloody battle for his life.
Dad! And I was screaming, don't let him eat me, just don't let him eat me.
Dad! Dad, come on! Come on, grab my hand!
Northern Australia. Protected by law, the saltwater croc population has swelled nearly 5,000% over the last 30 years to as many as 150,000. They are man-eaters, and no stretch of water anywhere is safe. On a tidal river, this 12-footer is looking for its next meal.
The
their diet consists usually of fish and crabs, crustaceans, small mammals, that kind of thing. But an 18-foot crocodile can drag down a buffalo if it really wants to.
Although he normally hunts in rivers, today he heads out into the open sea.
People have seen saltwater crocodiles swimming past oil rigs and past boats just in the middle of the ocean. And so what's this crocodile doing? It's just swimming from one point to another.
On Thursday Island, at the northern tip of Queensland, 37-year-old police sergeant Jeff Tanswell and his wife Jane, also a trained police officer, are hitting the water for a day of fun in the sun.
My entire life I've been brought up by the water. So we've always been brought up with boats and diving and fishing, and that's just second nature.
If we go fishing, or we'd just go out and have a look and jump out on a reef.
Hi! Hey! Hi!
Today they plan on doing some spear fishing with their friends Amanda and Dave. They head towards the remote Adolphus Islands, an hour away.
We hadn't been there before, so this is going to be another opportunity for us to explore.
The ocean around here is dangerous.
We're a bit, I guess, aware of the possibility of sharks being in the water.
It's something that's always stored in the back of your head. Let's just enjoy the ride, but let's be aware. Keep an eye out for a shark.
The last thing on Jeff's mind is running into an aggressive saltwater croc.
All I knew was that crocodiles inhabit the coastline, and they need to go from river to river to river. And they do not go out to sea. And that was what I was brought up with.
But he's wrong, dead wrong. A wandering killer croc is also headed to the Adolphus Islands on a collision course with Jeff's party. They pull into a coral reef and scout for any signs of predators.
We were making sure that there was no sharks or anything in the water that was dangerous, but we didn't see any sharks.
If there's going to be a shark, he's going to be patrolling the deep water. So I'm not going to go there. I'm going to take the safer option, and I'm going to go in closer to the coast.
Amanda and Dave are the first ones in. Because they're entering unfamiliar waters, Jeff asks his wife to stay on board.
You have to leave someone on the boat just for safety. If you catch a fish, if it bleeds, you don't want to have fish blood in the water. Could attract sharks, so if they catch a fish or crayfish or something, they just hold it up and I start the boat, go over.
Jeff enters deep in an alien world where he is both the hunter and the potential prey.
You can see all the little colourful fish dancing around in amongst all this brightly lit coral. I saw the other two diving with us. They started heading out a bit wide. And I remember thinking, I'm not comfortable diving out to where the coral edge is, where it drops off into the deeper water, because sharks could come and go.
But sharks are not the problem. The hungry 12-foot saltwater croc is closing in.
I remember a little voice in the back of my head's going, there could be other big things out here.
The giant croc quietly stalks Jeff and his friends. It's breeding season, and like all crocs, he's more aggressive than usual. Jeff heads up for air.
I just thought I'd been hit by a boat. The fear that a predator instills in its prey it's bottomless.
No matter how fast you move, If a crocodile's head is half a meter from you and it strikes, you cannot possibly get away.
Jane can't quite make out what's going on.
And it all happened within a matter of a split second. I remember staring at that bit of water going, did I just see what I saw, or is it my imagination?
The crocodile clamps down on Jeff's head.
I've become aware of this pressure on my head, this crushing pressure on my head.
The crocodiles have got the strongest jaw muscles of any animal that we know for their size. They've got about 66, sometimes 68 teeth in their jaws. They'll puncture through flesh, they'll go through shell, and they'll even go into bone.
Jeff is dragged down with his head ripped open. He's bleeding heavily and running out of air.
He's just gone down with no splash, no screaming, no kicking. Jeff! Jeff!
I had no feeling of the water, the temperature, sounds, everything, sight, everything was gone. They've got the power just to shut down your entire system and you don't have a say in it. It was a mixture of just horror as well as just total disbelief. You're on a remote tropical coral island. You're not looking for a crocodile.
Jane starts the boat to stop it drifting. She has absolutely no idea that her husband below is being drowned by a giant croc.
I could feel by my neck muscles that he's pulling me down to the sea floor by my head.
That is one of the things that a crocodile will do if it wants to overpower its prey. Most animals can't hold their breath for anything like as long as a crocodile can.
Jeff knows he can't stay under for more than a couple of minutes.
Trying to stop what's going on, but I can't. He's just too big, too strong. I remember kicking madly with my fins. You're just in overload. I don't know if it's adrenaline or what. It's all your senses trying to work overtime to save you.
And then, a miracle.
I remember seeing the jaws release and the sudden burst of light, and I just shot to the surface.
I saw his head come up and him blow the water out of his snorkel.
Jeff has no idea where the croc is and when it might bite again.
All that was going through my head was his big block head coming back up and grabbing my legs.
And then just behind his head, I thought I saw something moving.
The killer croc surfaces inches away, closing in on his prey.
I could feel the warm blood running down the side of my face. He's got the teeth, he's got the scales, he's got the claws, he's got everything. You have nothing.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was the most unexpected thing.
I remember looking at this thing and then the brains kicked into gear going, we've got to try and survive this.
The croc slowly circles. It sizes up Jeff from every angle. It could rip him apart at any moment.
If the prey is large, then it will produce what's known as the death roll. And then it spins its entire body. If a crocodile grabs me on the arm and starts to spin, the weak point here is at the elbow or at the shoulder, and that's where it will dislocate.
We all know that these things come back to finish you off.
Jeff realizes he may only have minutes to live. Police Sergeant Jeff Tanswell has been brutally attacked by a saltwater crocodile in Queensland, Australia. And now his wife, Jane, also a trained officer, is desperate to save him before the croc finishes him off.
Straight away, you just think, this is it. Someone's going to die here. I just had to try and get him out of the water.
Jeff's frantic movements are only making matters worse. He needs to get back to the boat before the reptile returns for more.
If you splash and splash and splash, the croc can feel that, it can hear it, and it's more likely to attract it back to the place.
Stuck my head in the water a couple of times, just trying to see where the hell he went.
Next minute, I had the boat beside him and I was helping him in the boat from the left-hand side of the boat. I don't know how I pulled him out of the water. I think it was just a pure adrenaline.
I've got you. Okay. You're okay. Open your eyes. Open your eyes. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. I'm right here, okay?
Concerned about their friends, Jane swings the boat around to the other side of the bay and finds Amanda and Dave unharmed. But the monster croc is still somewhere below.
Get some towels. Cover.
Everyone may be safely in the boat, but Jeff's wounds are serious.
I got a puncture hole in my left cheek. I got a laceration on my left temple. The left ear was torn. And I got lacerations behind both my ears where the teeth went in, and scratches on my back where his claws went in.
It's essential Jeff gets to the hospital as quickly as possible, but they are a good hour away from the coast.
He could have a brain injury. He could have some sort of compression on his brain. He could have a stroke.
He could also be infected by the croc.
Its teeth are covered in mud, covered in bacteria. It's a breeding ground for bacteria. If that crocodile then bites you, it drives those bacteria deep into your flesh, and it can cause a much bigger problem than the bite itself.
Crocs kill as many as 200 people a year. And right now, Jeff looks like he might join that gruesome club.
We got to the hospital and went straight into the emergency room.
I had all my wounds scraped and washed out, which was quite painful. And then they microsurgery my ear and stitched everything back together.
He owes his life to Jane's quick rescue and pure luck.
Certainly, if it wanted to kill him, it would have.
Jeff knows all too well how close he came to death.
There is nothing as terrifying as realising that this thing is going to come along and eat you, and you can't do a thing about it.
No further attacks were reported in the Adolphus Island region that summer. Most likely, the saltwater crocodile returned to the coast and headed upriver. The worst saltwater croc attack is said to have happened in World War II during the Battle of Ramree Island in Burma. Surrounded by British troops, a group of Japanese soldiers desperately tried to escape through mangrove swamps infested with saltwater crocs. The next morning, only 20 survivors were found. Nearly 400 may have been devoured by the hungry crocs. The Guinness Book of World Records ranked the attack as the worst animal disaster in history. But crocodiles are by no means the most dangerous animal in the water. That title falls to the hippo, Africa's most deadly creature. Weighing as much as a small pickup truck, hippos kill around 200 people in Africa each year. For millennia, they have been a deadly threat to people living throughout Africa. The mighty Egyptians had the most to fear. Hippos used to live all along the Nile, the lifeblood of their civilization. They were a danger to boats and to people working on the river's edge. The animals were considered so powerful, they were associated with gods. Kings hunted them from royal ships. It was a brutally dangerous sport. In around 3100 BC, Menes, the first king of unified Egypt, is said to have been carried off and killed by a hippopotamus during such a hunt, ending his 62-year reign. More than 5,000 years later, while leading a river safari in Zimbabwe, guide Paul Templar also found out just how brutal a hippo attack can be.
I had tusks going through me every which way but loose. There was a lot of blood in the water. You could see he'd been quite badly bitten.
The Zambezi, one of the largest rivers in Africa, and home to this huge male hippo. The lone bull is particularly aggressive. It probably recently lost a fight with another male and was thrown out of its pod or herd. And now he's viciously protecting his new territory.
Hippos respond the same way we would if someone repeatedly broke into our homes, with extreme aggression.
The bachelor bull has attacked 7 people in the last few months, defending its turf. And he's more than ready to do it again. Zimbabwe River guide Paul Templar is enjoying a quiet afternoon off when he's unexpectedly asked for a special favor.
Hey, good. That's how you doing. That's cool. All good.
Hey guys, I got plans. Go to Sunset Cruise. I was sitting in the pub when the folks came in and said, "Hey, we need a guide." So now I had a tough choice to make. Do I spend the rest of my day sitting in the pub, or do I go and lead the canoe safari?
No, for today. Okay. Good. Let's go.
I went and led the canoe safari.
It's a decision he would soon regret.
Good afternoon, guys. My name's Paul. We are the crew responsible for taking you down the Zambezi River this afternoon. It's going to be a fantastic
Paul is
afternoon.
joined by 3 other guides: Ben, Evans, and his close friend, Mike McNamara. It's a trip they've done lots of times before.
The trip itself is what we call a wine route. It's one of the trips where the guests don't actually paddle themselves. And the idea is that they just relax and watch the sun go down. It's a sunset trip. It lasts about an hour and a half.
The idea was just to sit back and relax and take in everything that nature had to offer.
Paul is on the lookout for the rogue hippo that has attacked 7 others over the last few months. He's already had his own nasty run-in with the 3-ton monster.
About 6 months prior to this, I'd been leading a similar canoe safari, and I'd been attacked by a big brute of a hippo.
The hippo had smacked the bottom of Paul's canoe, catapulting him and 2 passengers into the water. That time, they had escaped unharmed.
I knew that that hippo was in the area, and though I couldn't see him, I thought going through the narrow channels would be my safest option.
And so far, so good. As they come around the bend, Paul notices a large pod of hippos.
They weren't really a concern. They were off to the side, and I could see them, and I felt that I had a pretty good sense of what they were up to.
They proceed cautiously, making sure they don't startle the hippos. Paul also scans the water for any that are submerged.
Occasionally you'll get ears, occasionally you'll get a head, occasionally you'll get the whole body. Then there'll be nothing. They'll all disappear underwater. You watch the water's moving differently if there's a couple of ton hippo moving around beneath it.
All seems to be going well. They safely get past the pod into faster moving water. And then
I turned just in time to see Evans flying through the air.
Likely it's the same rogue hippo. From underwater, he surfaced like a giant torpedo and knocked Evans clear out of the boat. Paul watches in horror as the current drags Evans away.
Evans went under and then popped up again.
Paul paddles full speed towards Evans.
I turn my canoe around, so I'm going backwards, so I'm between whatever's there and him. I back in to try to rescue him.
Paul reached for him with a paddle, shouting to him to grab the paddle so that he could pull him out.
I'm probably 4 or 5 feet away from him when I see this bow wave cruising in towards me.
And it was at that point where the hippo just erupted next to Paul.
While he's trying to help his friend, The hippo turns on Paul and attacks.
Just all hell broke loose.
The hippo just closed its jaws on his upper torso and pulled him off the boat.
The hippo tries to swallow Paul whole.
They attack the boats not because they recognize I will get to the people in here, but because they recognize it as a foreign object that needs to be removed.
I remember this incredible pressure crushing down on my lower back.
Hippos are not interested in eating the people that get attacked. It's an aggressive reflex of, if I encounter something with my jaw, I will crush it. So the crushing comes from the hydraulic press that is their jaw, somewhere on the order of maybe 1,800 pounds. What the canines do is act as hole punchers. They can go through anything. They are strong, they are massive, they are sharp.
Paul is kicking and clawing for his life. He needs to get out from the mouth of the beast. Evans also needs urgent help. He's in danger of drowning in the strong currents. There's nothing fellow guide Mike can do.
We couldn't get to Evans because the hippo was in the way.
Finally, Paul's aggressive struggling pays off.
Pushed and pulled. At one point, the monster loosened his grip long enough for me to escape. I just sucked in a lung full of fresh air, and I came face to face with Evans.
But Evans doesn't look right at all.
I got the sense that all was not well. He wasn't going anywhere. I think terror and panic had quite literally overwhelmed him.
For Evans, it's too late. He's drowned in the strong current.
He literally just rolled his eyes up and he sank and he was dead.
And that's when the hippo zeroes in on Paul again.
At this point, it was all up to the hippo, and really, there's nothing you can do.
This time, the hippo is clamped down on Paul's legs, tearing into skin and bones.
The hippo started the attack and was not going to finish the aggressive behavior until the intruders were gone.
It happened very quickly, and you could see that it was a serious attack, that there was going to be some serious injuries out of this.
They don't just try to win, they try to destroy their opponent. One of the clients watching later said that it was like watching a vicious dog, literally just trying to rip apart a rag doll. His huge tusks tearing through my torso as he drove me underwater. So I had tusks going through me every which way but loose. He bit down so hard that I thought for sure he was going to bite me in half.
The hippo has speared Paul badly, and now he starts dragging him down to drown him.
I remember lying on the bottom of the river and looking up. I remember I could see the different hues of green and yellow and the sunlight shining on the water surface. And I thought to myself, I wonder who can hold their breath the longest.
Paul is close to death. Most humans can't go without breathing for much more than a minute, while the hippo can stay under 5 times longer.
Fighting for territory is just second nature to hippos, and fighting to the death is second nature. They don't hold back at all.
I watched my blood mingle with the water, and I just wondered which would happen first, if I'd bleed to death or if I'd drown.
During a bloody hippo attack in Zimbabwe, Africa, one man has died, while another, river guide Paul Templar, has been gored by the creature's teeth and dragged to the river floor. And now, Paul is also drowning. All anyone can do is look on helplessly.
The amount of blood that was in the water showed that Paul had been bitten very badly.
There's no sign anywhere of Paul. There's no way he could have survived a second attack.
I didn't think I'd see him again. And then Paul popped up.
But then the hippo spat me out again, giving me another chance to escape.
Barely alive, Paul is bleeding badly. Mike guns forward on his kayak to save him. He knows there's not a second to lose.
I was just shouting to him to grab the front of the kayak.
I managed to grab a hold of the handle on the boat's nose.
For a moment, Paul seems safe. But the hippo comes back for more. It tries to chomp down on Paul's dangling legs. Any second, he'll be dragged down again.
He was hitting and thrashing, and it was not good. I knew I didn't have much left in me.
He can barely hold on. One arm is shredded. Both shoulders are punctured with bites. But astoundingly, the hippo backs off.
They're very unlikely to actually come into shallower water to follow an attack. It's not what they do.
To get to the shallows, Mike has to fight the current. Paul is losing his grip.
I was bleeding profusely. I was getting weaker.
Paul hangs on. Mike paddles wildly. It's a race against time.
I paddled to a point where there was a tuft of grass on a small rock sticking out of the river.
The longer it lasted, the more it sapped my energy.
Finally, they reach the shallows.
I don't know how we do it, but Mac dragged me out of there.
The hippo then stopped the attack, moved back, and popped up, but not actually following us into the shallower water.
Out of his element, the hippo gives up the chase.
Oh, I got you, buddy. Just hang in there.
Paul is barely alive.
Oh, hang on, look at me, buddy. Just keep breathing. We got you.
He needs medical attention desperately. To make matters worse, the first aid kit and a radio have both washed away.
His arm, from what we could see without ripping the sleeve off, had been bitten through the bone 2 or 3 times. It was shattered. And a bite mark through the shoulder that you could virtually see daylight through. He was bitten through the foot.
Look at me. Look at me. Oh, look at me. Stay with me. Something that's working.
Mike and fellow guide Ben try to stop Paul from bleeding to death.
And started literally putting pressure on arteries to try and just stem the bleeding that was still coming.
I can feel my lungs full of blood, man.
Thinking fast, Mike uses the only thing available, cling wrap from the safari meals. They seal all visible puncture wounds on Paul's chest. Mike and Ben lift Paul into a canoe.
When I put him in the boat and sent him off, I thought he was going to die.
Hold on.
He definitely didn't look as though with those injuries he could survive.
The only way out is right through the killer hippo's territory.
What we're seeing is an animal under stress. The first time that someone breaks into your house, maybe you won't fight them off. The second time, maybe you'll fight them off a bit more. By the 10th time, you're armed and ready to go.
But as we were pulling out and this angry hippo was still there, I thought for sure he was going to come and finish me off.
But the hippo chooses to stay put, and Paul is quickly taken downriver. By chance, along the way, they meet a local medical crew conducting emergency drills.
There's a shock trauma team who are just practicing. Just go figure, a couple of minutes away.
They take Paul on an 8-hour drive to the hospital, where he learns that his arm is beyond repair.
They took off part of this arm. They took it off just above the elbow to start with. I got gas gangrene, which meant that my body was rotting from the inside. So they ended up having to chop more of me off.
In the end, his arm is amputated. Mike and the river raft clients are rescued later that night. A search party is sent out for Evans.
It was a full 2 days before we found his body quite a bit further downstream, but it washed out.
The rogue hippo is never found.
shark was looking at me like face to face. It's the scariest sight I've ever seen.
He actually latched his mouth onto my right arm and just threw me around on the bottom of the Gulf like I was a rag doll.
And a picture that stays with me is of this great big head coming up towards me. The fear of dying was unbelievable.
It's everyone's worst nightmare, being eaten alive by a wild animal. In this episode, 3 remarkable stories of people savagely attacked by the ocean's most powerful predator. What's it like when you become human prey? When Australian Eric Nearus went diving for shellfish in 2007, he was nearly bitten in 2 by a great white shark.
Everything went black. I started to get shaken horizontally. I was getting eaten alive.
The great white shark is top of the food chain. Hardly changed since the dinosaurs. It's the ultimate killing machine. This full-grown shark is now targeting Cape Howe on the south coast of Australia. The strong currents here attract fish, which attracts seals, which are the shark's favorite food. It's the rich marine life at Cape Howe that also attracts fishermen to these waters. Eric Nearus is one of them. He specializes in abalone, a large sea mollusk and culinary delicacy.
I call myself an underwater labourer. Basically, we crawl around the bottom of the ocean measuring abalone and collecting them. It's a pretty strenuous job. If I don't catch a certain amount of abalone each month, I don't make any money, so I can't pay my bills. To tell you the truth, that day I was only half-heartedly getting ready to go to work. Being school holidays, I could have found something more interesting to do, like take the kids out to a park or the movies and have a family day out.
Today, Eric's 16-year-old son, Mark, is joining him. He's working as a deckhand.
Mark was only out with me to make a bit of pocket money for himself. He'd only deckied for me about 4 times, so he wasn't actually what you'd call experienced at all.
Mark isn't as comfortable as his father in these waters.
Every time we've been out before, like, we've seen sharks, and there'll be sharks, like, just fly in front of our boat. I don't know, it was just a morning, like, it was real freaky morning, like, real quiet and, like, no noise or nothing like that. Sort of think to yourself, something's gonna go bad, something's gonna go bad.
Mark's intuition is dead on. A hungry great white has returned to these familiar waters, where it hunts its favorite prey, seals. In the water, Eric breathes through a long hose that feeds him oxygen from onboard tanks. He also wears special clothing.
I wore a lead-lined weight vest. It has about 7mm thick lead plate sewed inside it, and it fully covers your back and most of your chest, and that keeps you on the bottoms.
Although shark attacks are extremely rare, Eric knows it's a hazard that goes with the job.
When you're a diver and you're in, their domain, you've always got that inkling in the back of your mind. I wonder if a shark will show up. The water was actually dirtier than I normally would like to dive in. That's when you start to even imagine that there's something out there, and the hair on the back of your neck will stand up and... a seal or a school of large fish go past you, and all of a sudden you'll start to think, okay, I wonder if there's something chasing them.
Surprise is the great white's best tactic. Stealthily, the hungry animal closes in on its next meal.
Seals are very cognizant of sharks being in an area, and it's not unusual to see them haul out under those circumstances.
Unlike the seals, Eric hasn't yet picked up on the shark.
I sort of wound my way around the boulders and the kelp and just sort of hugged the bottom. And after an hour, I filled up my first bag, and I sent that bag up to Mark. I remember looking up at Mark at the hull of the boat. I could just see it, and I thought, beauty, Mark's doing his job. He's right above my air bubbles. He's a good kid. He's following me. He's not too far away.
Mark's not sure why, but he can't shake the feeling that something's not quite right.
It was just weird, like, and I kept going over the side of the boat and looking down and didn't feel right. Didn't at all.
I was getting into cruise mode. You know, you sort of get into daydream mode where you just work and forget about everything else. It's so peaceful too. You can only hear the hum of your air regulator.
Humans wearing a black wetsuit are doing a pretty darn good job of making themselves look like a seal or a sea lion.
One second it was daylight, the next second everything went black, and a really nasty vice-like pressure crushing my chest and upper back. And I wasn't really sure what had actually happened to me.
The shark has taken one supersized bite. Eric's head and shoulders are in its mouth. One arm is down its throat.
Inside the jaws, I couldn't see any light. It was just all dark there because I was facing the back of his throat. My right arm was actually hanging down the shark's throat. My arm refused to work anymore. It felt like it was broken.
The head in a seal is the working end of a critter, and sharks know that much. If they can bite off the head, the rest of it's an easy meal.
I'd never experienced anything like this in my whole life.
Eric's lead vest has stopped the shark's razor-sharp teeth from slicing him in two, but this only makes the animal more determined.
Then I started to get shaken horizontally with a really hard threshing motion.
When a shark head shakes, what it's doing is dragging its teeth, especially its upper teeth, through the prey from side to side like this, and sawing through the prey.
By thinking, oh, is this the end? Is this what it's like to die? I was actually getting eaten alive.
A great white shark has half-swallowed abalone fisherman Eric near us. All that's saving him from certain death is his lead diving vest.
My instinct kicked in, and I had a free left hand, and I started to feel around the jawline of the shark, and I reached up higher, and I felt a slimy membrane. I realised that must have been the eye.
Eric gouges his fingers deep into the shark's eye.
Anything we can do that demonstrates to the shark that we're big and strong and are willing to fight back is a good thing.
Surprised by the counterattack, the shark begins to loosen its hold.
And I started to wriggle out backwards a bit, and I wasn't sure if I was going to get out or not, and just as I thought I was going to be free, the bottom jaw closed and I felt these teeth going into the back of my head, into my skull. I twisted as hard as I could again, trying to gouge the eye, and the shark reacted again.
The animal at that point reacted by letting go as a matter of defense for its own self. Sharks aren't dummies. Eric caused it pain. It realized that it had a formidable foe there in the water.
The shark was looking at me like face to face. It's the scariest sight I've ever seen.
As Eric's blood seeps into the water, the shark waits for its prey to weaken even further.
The white shark will bite and let go its prey to cause exsanguination, leaves it to bleed to death till it gets weaker, and then it comes in to finish it off.
You really think your time's up. You think, okay, it's got me. It can fly into me and finish me whenever it likes. When you're in a situation where you feel you're going to lose your life, you get a few thoughts that flash through your mind. And I thought about Mark. He'd never see me again. And I knew the mental effect that would have on a 16-year-old. Sort of tried to calm myself down, and I thought, well, if I panic, I'm only going to be dead anyway.
Eric is faced with a life or death decision. Swim to the surface or try and hide from the shark somewhere on the sea floor.
The water was going a dirty brown colour around me from blood loss. Blood attracts sharks, and that's when I made the decision that I was going to go to the surface. And as the shark slowly circled me, I spread my legs and arms out a bit so it could see that I wasn't a seal. I was something, different to what it normally would eat.
Eric heads for the surface. It's a gamble that could cost him his life. If the animal reacts to the sudden movement, Eric's finished. Searching for abalone on the sea floor, Australian Eric near us has been half swallowed by a great white shark. He's managed to fight free, and now he needs to get out of the water before it strikes again.
Those marble dolls with the black painted eyes, that glossy black colour, that's the colour of those sharks' eyes, just a dead black. And when you've got those eyes on you and they're only like 1 to 2 metres away, it makes you feel very small indeed. It really had a tough job holding back the fear.
Eric breaks the surface, but the 15-foot monster is still circling below.
The whole time the shark was just below me, going around and around my flippers, and it could have, taken me any time it wanted to.
The shark didn't want to just rush right back in because the last time it did that, it didn't have a pleasant outcome.
Dad! I'm coming!
All Eric wants is to get out of the water, fast.
I screamed at Mark that I needed help. He came straight over to me.
Eric makes it out alive, but his wounds are horrific.
I suffered a broken arm, a broken nose, 4 teeth went into the back of my skull, and my other teeth marks are in my chest. So thank God for that lead vest, or I wouldn't be here now.
Eric tried to return to abalone fishing, but fear kept him out of the water. Now he works on dry land as a security officer.
I can't even say how much it hurts still to this day, the knowing that I could have lost the best thing in my life, and I just don't know how to say it. There's no words that can literally say it.
When you've had a narrow escape You sort of feel you've been given a second chance. It makes a great deal of difference to your life, and all of a sudden you start to appreciate things that you didn't even think about before. We're pretty good mates, young Mark and myself.
Ever since people first ventured into the seas, we have been afraid of the monsters that lurk below. The great white shark has always been the most feared, infamous as a ruthless predator that will kill anything. But the smaller bull shark is actually fiercer. Packed with more testosterone than any other creature on the planet, these naturally bad-tempered sharks can attack their prey in as little as 2 feet of water. When a bull shark bites, almost nothing will make it let go. In the summer of 1916, a horrifying series of shark attacks shocked holidaymakers in New Jersey. Originally blamed on the great white, these attacks were in part the inspiration for the novel Jaws. But many experts now think the villains were really bull sharks. The first victim that summer of 1916 was Charles Epting Vansant. He started shouting for help, but people assumed he was calling to a nearby dog. When a lifeguard finally reached him, his left thigh was stripped of flesh. Vansant bled to death before reaching the hospital. The Coast Guard was sure this was a freak accident, so beaches remained open. A fatal decision. Just 5 days later, a second killing. The ocean turned red when a hungry shark went for Charles Bruder. It bit his right leg clean off. Bruder bled to death before he could be rescued. The next attacks were even more terrifying. The scene of the crimes, 16 miles inland in a freshwater creek. 12-year-old Lester Stillwell was playing in the water with friends. They noticed what they thought was an old log in the water. It started swimming towards them. Suddenly, the shark pulled Lester under, and he never surfaced. A man entered the water to bravely search for the boy's body, but he too was fatally wounded by the bloodthirsty shark. Experts now know that great whites can't survive in fresh water, but bull sharks can. Bull sharks may actually be responsible for many more attacks than previously thought. Chuck Anderson knows just how aggressive a bull shark can be. When training for a triathlon in 2000, he was savagely attacked by a bull shark, an attack that changed Chuck's life forever.
He was just freight train. And even though I hadn't seen it, I knew exactly what it was.
The Gulf of Mexico is famous for crystal blue waters and white sandy beaches. But this is America's shark attack capital. In fact, there are more shark attacks here than anywhere else in the world.
Almost anyone that's been in the water have been close to a shark at some time. The sharks see the humans. Humans don't always see the shark.
And public enemy number one is the ferocious bull shark. It will target almost anything that moves, even humans.
Bull sharks mean business. When they attack, they truly are going after a human.
And what they start, they mean to finish.
Bull sharks are persistent, and I think for that reason, I would be a lot more concerned about a bull shark than a white shark.
It's early morning, and this bull shark is already on the hunt. It patrols the shoreline because it knows sooner or later something tasty will swim by. Chuck Anderson, a former football coach and father of two, is training for a triathlon. Today, he intends to train in the ocean. he is joined by a friend, Richard Watley, and 4-time Hawaiian Ironman champion, Karen Forfer.
I was very honored to be swimming with Karen that day. She was such a good swimmer, and the male ego of keeping up with a 64-year-old lady kind of kicked in automatically.
The swimmers know there are sharks in these waters, but they're prepared to risk it for the love of their sport.
I always was a little bit leery when I got out there. I was constantly looking around and that sort of thing, but still in the back of your mind, it was kind of always there. And I remember thinking, gosh, I was a little bit nervous out there that day.
Picking up on the erratic movement in the water, the bull shark moves in closer to investigate.
Humans are not a natural part of the sea. As a result, we as humans are engaging in provocative acts simply because we splash so much, we make so much noise, we do so many other things that are attractive to sharks.
Chuck's friend swims alone in a deeper water, where there is less of an undertow. Karen and Chuck, however, feel safer sticking together closer to the shoreline. A decision they will soon regret. After 5 minutes, Chuck finally gets into a groove. His mind is now focused on outswimming Karen.
Then we got to a place that I knew were an old set of piling. Pier was built there and had blown down during Hurricane Frederick back in the late 70s.
That's essentially an artificial reef. First, various invertebrates grow on the piling, then fish come to eat those invertebrates, then bigger fish come to eat those, and then sharks come to eat those. And so it's a natural area where, as a shark, one would go to find food.
Unwittingly, the swimmers have now entered this shark's natural killing ground.
Karen kind of went ahead of me. I'd like to say I was chivalrous and letting her go through the pilings, but actually she was kicking my rear end pretty good.
The shark observes his potential meal as the swimmers make their way past the pilings.
I remember looking at my watch, and it was 6:38 a.m. I took 2 more strokes in the water. It nailed me. Felt like a linebacker getting run over by a fullback. He just freight trained me. He hit me and knocked me out of the water.
A classic bump and bite attack. The shark was getting a feel for the size and the power of whatever it was going to bite.
And even though I hadn't seen it, I knew exactly what it was. I felt like he knew that I was out there in his territory, and he wasn't very happy about it. My big fear was that there was more than one. There was a school of sharks, and that I was in real trouble. I started hollering for Karen, who had gotten a pretty good ways away from me at that stage of the game, to get to the beach. Get to the beach now. Hurry, get to the beach.
Karen races to shore, but Chuck is too far out. He's on his own.
Well, it's a pretty helpless feeling. There was no way I was going to outswim anything that was out there with me.
Chuck desperately searches for any sign of the shark.
And I was treading water, and I remember looking around on the surface.
What Chuck can't see is that the shark is gunning straight for him.
I've been a scuba diver before, and when you're down on the bottom, you can see around you. That part of it you can kind of come to grips with and handle because you see what's happening around you. When you're on the surface of the water, I didn't know what I was dealing with. I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't know when it was going to get to me. I put my face in the water. When I did, up from the bottom was the shark coming directly at me.
Chuck begins to panic. He knows the shark could finish him off with one vicious bite. Chuck Anderson is training for a triathlon when he's ambushed by a hungry bull shark. The animal only bumped him the first time, but now it's going in for the kill.
I realized that if I didn't get a hold of myself, that if I panicked that I was going to be in a lot more trouble than if I tried to have a plan and protect myself. And just instinctively, I threw my hands out to push off of him.
Chuck's move is disastrous.
Took all 4 fingers off my right hand, just clean as a whistle. White knuckles were showing through. I mean, they were literally exposed.
Bull shark is probably one of the most powerful biters. Its head is extremely big and robust. It has huge muscles, jaw muscles. It's a very strong predator in terms of its jaw morphology.
Undoubtedly, the shark just missed. I'm sure the shark would have much rather had the entire lower arm if it could have grabbed it.
The taste of flesh sends the animal's killer instincts into overdrive. This time, he's determined to get a bigger bite.
I thought, he's not going to just swim off. There's blood here. He's taking a bite of me. He's going to keep coming back. I realized I'm not going to survive.
Fighting a 300-pound shark in open water is a losing battle.
A big fear that I had was that he would attack me from the back. You know, I couldn't protect myself if he came from the back and I couldn't see him. That's when he hit me. And I remember kind of losing a little bit of my breath. He hit me that hard.
Bull sharks will hit the victim over and over again. And they'll actually single them out amongst a bunch of people. If there's multiple people in the water, sometimes they'll go through the people and hit the same victim over and over again.
Chuck doesn't have time to react because the shark's fin is once again slicing through the water towards him.
Everything goes in slow motion. You're kind of in a fog, thinking it won't ever end. It's just a strange, eerie type of feeling. My kids kept coming to mind, and I just couldn't imagine ending my life without being able to tell them I love them. I remember thinking if I was going to survive, I had to get mad.
The shark opens its massive jaws and drags its prey into the deep.
As I pushed off of him, he actually latched his mouth onto my right arm and took me immediately down to the bottom, 12, 15 feet of water. He started doing the gnashing, the feeding frenzy, just threw me around on the bottom of the Gulf like I was a rag doll.
The shark's only mission is to eat. He tries to chew off Chuck's arm.
If there's one species that one could say that actually goes into a feeding frenzy, I would say it's a bull shark. Once they get into the attack mode, you can't change their mind.
I'm a pretty big guy. It was ridiculous how easy he was throwing me around. I never thought I'd get back up to the surface.
The testosterone-crazed bull shark hasn't finished with Chuck. And now, the athlete is on the verge of drowning. A bull shark has viciously attacked triathlete Chuck Anderson. The animal has been thrashing its human prey for over a minute.
It was at that stage of the game that me and the good Lord had a conversation, and I asked him to get me up to the surface so I could get a breath of fresh air. And all of a sudden I felt my heels dragging on sand.
Now the shark's dragging him at high speed towards the beach. In its determination to eat Chuck, incredibly, the shark drags him onto a sandbar. The swimmer seizes his only chance of survival.
He couldn't move. I had my arm in his mouth. I was trying to hold my face away from his mouth so that he wouldn't snap at my face. And it was a real unique feeling as I was hitting him, and I kicked him a couple of times, and I was doing everything I could to get away from him, but it wasn't fazing the shark at all. I mean, I know people say poke him in the eye, but when you're dead in front of a shark and the eyes are on the side, you know, I couldn't see his eyes, being on the surface, that type of thing. I didn't have time to collect my thoughts to, okay, let's poke him in the eye. Most of it's instinctive, and my instinct was to hit him and kick him and that sort of thing, trying to get away. I couldn't get my arm out of his mouth by pulling, so I worked it up and down twice and jerked real hard. And when I did, it completely degloving my arm. A hand popped off in his mouth. There really wasn't a sense of, oh my gosh, I've lost an arm. It was more of a sense of, oh my gosh, I survived. You know, I'm very fortunate. I shouldn't be dead.
The shark has lost the battle. It waits for the next wave and propels itself out to sea.
Couldn't get a helicopter in to pick me up and take me to a trauma unit. And so I remember one paramedic turned to the other and said, man, if we don't get him to the hospital in the next few minutes, he's gonna die. And I thought, whoa, time out, hang on. That's not an option here now. I thought I was fine. And the guy said, Coach, you're blue, you're losing blood. We can't stop the bleeding. If we don't hurry up and get you to a hospital, you're in real trouble. And I thought that was the first time that I really had time to think about the fact that I might die. And that was a real scary moment.
Chuck is rushed to the hospital, where what remains of his arm is amputated at the elbow.
I was halfway to the hospital before I ever really came to grips with the fact that, hey, you don't have a right arm anymore. And I promise you it's not gonna come back.
Despite the tragedy, Chuck Anderson is determined not to let it ruin his life. Just 10 months after the attack, the father of two competes in an able-bodied triathlon and wins.
My kids were on either side of me, and we crossed the finish line together. And geez. And I was proud as his dad that I could show my kids, if you work hard enough, you know, you can do whatever you want to do.
The bull shark may be the most aggressive shark in coastal waters, but in the deep, the oceanic white tip is the greater menace. About 3/4 the size of a great white, this shark rarely encounters people. But when a ship goes down or a plane crash lands on water, the deadly white tip will target human prey. In fact, the white tip is responsible for the largest ever attack on people. Just after midnight on July 30th, 1945, the Japanese torpedoed the USS Indianapolis. The battleship had delivered the first atomic bomb and was on a new mission in the West Pacific when it was hit. Of the nearly 1,200 sailors aboard, 900 are thought to have made it into the water alive. Sharks were most likely drawn to the wreckage by the sound of screaming, splashing men. The white tips went into a feeding frenzy. The men's horrific ordeal lasted 5 long days. By the time rescue boats arrived, more than 500 sailors were missing. Many had been devoured by the hungry sharks. Although the bull shark and the oceanic white tip may be more aggressive, it's the great white that has entered popular folklore as the ultimate ocean-going serial killer. Its size and power mean it will always be seen as the most terrifying of all sea creatures. In 1830, Joseph Blaney was attacked by a great white while he was fishing off the coast of Boston. The shark capsized Blaney's boat and pulled it right under, with the fishermen still in it. The boat resurfaced, but Blaney was never seen again. 130 years later, during a spearfishing competition, Australian Rodney Fox was attacked by a great white. It's one of the worst shark attacks anyone has ever survived.
I was hurled through the water faster than I could swim. It was right at the edge of my life. I was in really big trouble.
This great white shark is swimming the waters of South Australia, looking for food. He's around 20 feet long and 4,000 pounds. He is constantly on the hunt. And as Rodney Fox knows, it will eat almost anything that moves.
December the 8th, 1963, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, is a time I will never, never forget. Changed things in my whole life forever.
Today, it's Rodney's chance to retain his crown as South Australian spearfishing champion. He's been training hard and determined to win, despite the choppy water.
The weather wasn't very nice. It was a little bit windy, but it was something I had worked for. I had done so many deep diving and exercises, and I practiced holding my breath, and I'd made 2 beautiful spear guns.
Rodney is aware of the risks. 18 months earlier in this bay, his friend was attacked by a shark, which bit deep into his leg.
The word shark was sort of out there in the background with hell and death and devil and things like that. I was well aware that I could actually be attacked, but of course I didn't believe that it would be me.
The winner today will be the person who catches the largest number of different species in a 5-hour period.
The gun went off and everybody raced towards the shore. And I knew that I had to work hard, and you didn't get the fish on the surface. You had to be down there with them. You had to approach them in such a way where they didn't think you were an aggressive attacker, and then you would slowly bring the gun around and sneak up on them.
Rodney isn't reckless. He takes precautions against a shark attack.
What you do is to attach the fish onto a float that you tow with you on about 10 metres of ski rope. If any sharks came along looking for the bleeding fish, they could take them without getting near you.
This great white shark may be miles from Aldinga Beach, but its powerful sense of smell soon picks up on the blood in the water. It stealthily makes its way towards Rodney's tempting catch.
Because of their injuries, any speared fish is going to be releasing bodily fluids, blood and other things into the water. Shark, for instance, can smell a single drop of blood in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. That's pretty darn good.
Blood from the fish that had been speared was slowly going out to sea. In the tide, it was putting an odour trail several kilometres down the coast.
The blood, the struggling fish in the water, any electrical charge it picks up or anything like that, the shark would be attracted to that and probably swim upstream to find it.
I was so focused on doing well and looking for fish that I couldn't really think about anything else that might happen. I got a fairly large boarfish, which was really a prize fish and gave high points. And I thought, it could be a lucky day today.
After almost 4 hours in the water, Rodney comes in to weigh his fish and assess his chance of winning.
I found out that there was one fish that I really needed that would build up my points. And I cast my eyes over the area and thought, where would I find this particular species? And I thought, well out past the reef in very deep water,
Rodney heads back into the ocean, past the reef. But venturing off on his own puts him on a deadly collision course with a natural-born killer.
There's safety in numbers. That's why birds are found in flocks and fish are found in schools. Spear fishermen should be found in groups. Once you isolate yourself from the rest of the group, you become more vulnerable.
Alone and out on the edge of the reef, Rodney has no idea he's swimming directly towards the shark. A shark that has Rodney in its sights.
Humans aren't denizens of the sea. We don't see very well in the water. We don't smell things. We don't feel the vibrations of animals moving. And so we're not attuned to watching over our shoulder for predators.
Rodney tracks down his elusive prey. All he needs to do now is spear the prized fish, and the competition is his.
I was just squeezing the trigger when
the shark's massive jaws clamp around Rodney's chest. It begins thrashing him violently.
White sharks often engage in the marine version of shock and awe. Nothing is better as a predator than to have a sudden strike of overpowering strength to put your prey item in trouble.
the gun was knocked off my hand, the mask was knocked off my face, and I was actually hurled through the water faster than I could swim. I don't know why, but I thought, oh, I've been hit by a train. And even though I knew I was going fast, I have this memory of the shark's tail slowly going through the water.
As the shark drags Rodney deeper and deeper, it uses its razor-sharp teeth to try and sever his body in half.
The great white shark has broadly triangular teeth that work just like a steak knife, but in tandem, it's like having a big saw.
The fear of dying overcomes the fear of normal pain. The adrenaline that is raced into your body gives you special powers to be able to think and do. And as I was being forced through the water, it said, gouge his eyes, gouge his eyes.
Rodney reaches around the 2-ton beast and digs his fingers into one of its eyes. Miraculously, the animal lets go. But it has no intention of giving up on a spear fisherman.
Gouge at the eyes or the gills of the shark, and that is probably not what the shark would expect. So the texture, the taste, the response, everything is not what they expected. The animal abandons the attack at that point, not quite sure what it is. Doesn't mean they won't come back.
The fear was unbelievable. It was right at the edge of my life. I was in really big trouble. I knew I may not make it, but it never occurred to me to give up. Just keep fighting.
Rodney looks down into the deep.
And a picture that stays with me now is of this bright red water, which is my blood, and this great big head coming up from down below with those big triangular teeth towards me. And I thought, what can I do? What can I do? I have nothing to protect myself. I'm gone, I'm gone. The shark turned, instead of going for me, swallowed the whole fish float with the fish.
It looks like Rodney's cheated death. But then, a violent jolt. He's still attached to the float, and the shark dives and pulls him under.
I put my hand on my stomach trying to find the catch, but it must have swung all the way around. I couldn't find it.
Rodney is quickly running out of oxygen. He can't hold his breath any longer.
Those were the last few seconds that I was going to have of my whole life.
In Australia, spearfishing champion Rodney Fox has been savaged by a great white shark. He's survived the first onslaught, but the shark has swallowed Rodney's fish float, and the float is still attached to Rodney.
As I was being dragged down into the water, I was running out of air, and I thought, I'm gone. I can't hold on any longer. I'm going to have to breathe water and drown.
With no hope, Rodney gives up the fight. The shark has won. Then, the line snaps.
Instantly, I thought I have more chance. I've got life. I can make it to the surface.
Rodney has to get out of the water before the shark returns for more.
Unbelievably, a boat was coming over to find out what all the bright red water was.
Rodney has only just escaped with his life, but his injuries are horrific.
The lung was punctured, the spleen was uncovered, the main artery from the heart to the stomach was just left there, one nick, and I've died.
Rodney has cheated death, but before long, the champion spear fisherman returns to the water.
Sharks came at all angles from me. The little glistenings of the water turned into sharks. And I remember saying to myself, if you don't control this, Rodney, you're going to be no good. And I had to shake my head and get rid of the sharks and turn them back into little glistening things again. I wasn't meant to go, but you can't get much closer to death than that.
There are over 375 species of sharks swimming the world's oceans. But despite their fearsome reputation, only 4 target humans. Shark attacks are very rare. Fatalities, more so. But when a killer shark has us in its sights, it's the shark that rules the ocean.
My whole life I've worked in the conservation industry. And you work with dangerous game on a daily basis. So yeah, there's definitely a respect for big game, knowing their potential, but also the fact that we are in their territory.
As we encroach ever further into their territory, there will still be times on the African savannah when we become human prey.
They usually avoid people.
But as we increasingly crowd their water world, run-ins are bound to happen.
They're animals that are trying to protect their territory. You know, this is their habitat and this is the area they need to survive.
And when these river killers do attack, we become their human prey.
We're so used to controlling our world. We blast big holes in mountains to make roads. We put dams across the mightiest rivers. But one-on-one in the water, sharks still come out ahead.
Sharks are nature's most determined predators. But sometimes, miraculously, their human prey survives.
If you're subjected to a shark attack, you should fight like hell. There's no playing dead with a shark. You play dead with a shark, you will be dead.